Good morning, sir. If you could tell me your name.
Greg Forbes.
Greg Forbes. What branches of the service were you in?
I was when I was going to college. I was in the Army Reserve and went to drill sergeant school, and I was a drill sergeant for 5 years. And during the summer, being in the reserve, so I could stay in school. And as soon as I got through that, we had a couple of mishaps down there at Fort Polk. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but
Not too familiar.
there's a lot of crazy people down there. And I found out about the Coast Guard and went and checked on the Coast Guard, and being that I'd already been through a boot camp, I only had to go to about a month of familiarization with Coast Guard stuff, and I didn't have to go through all the other. And I stayed there for 26 years.
So how many years total did you do?
33.
33. That's a long time. What made you join the military?
Well, when I was going to college, I needed a job while I was going to college. And a friend of mine was, I saw him there at the University of Oklahoma, and he was dressed up in his Coast Guard uniform. And he told me he was in the Coast Guard Reserves, and they were paying for his college. I said, whoa. So I went down and checked it out. And being the fact I had been in the Army for 7 years, it was a lot more genteel. They cared more about the people than
A little more user-friendly?
than the Marines or the Army. The Air Force and the Coast Guard were pretty good. So then I retired from that and just found me another job.
What was your job in the military? What was your rating, your MOS?
I was in the Army. I was what's it? Just a regular infantry.
Okay, like a ground turn infantryman?
Yeah, and then I went to the drill sergeant school there, and I was the honor graduate for that class, and
So honor graduate, what is...
I was a 99.9
So you were almost the perfect soldier is what you're telling me.
according to their standards. And the funny thing was they had I was stationed there, and then they had some guys come back from the rifle range, and we're up. By then, I was already a drill sergeant. They let me stay there at the academy so I could train people, and so we heard a gunfire. Now, you got to remember, this is back in the late 60s, early 70s, when this country was crazy.
So Vietnam era?
Yeah.
Beginning of Vietnam?
Yeah, and these guys got in a rumble, and then they all pulled out the rifles. They'd been cleaning the rifles and started shooting at each other. And I went out there, and these guys are yelling at me, "Where you going? Where you going? You'll get your ass shot." That kind of stuff. And I said, "They ain't going to shoot me." And then one of them pointed a rifle at me. I said, "You better pull the trigger now, because if I get to you, I'm going to choke you to death." And he just kind of did that. And then all of a sudden the military police showed up from the other side of the base at Fort Polk, naturally. And it all calmed down. And it went away. But there were some instigators in it. And there was what's the word I'm looking for? There was a lot of the whites and blacks didn't mix back in that time.
Okay, so
the late 60s. It was
possibly like an interracial.
There was. They didn't ever have two races in the barracks. they might have another barracks over here with whites and whatever, and another over here with the African Americans, and that's where the damn firefight started. And I'm thank to God that nobody got shot and killed.
Well, I'm glad that you're still here.
Yeah.
So how did joining the military change your life? How did it impact your life?
I'm trying to think of the word. It was a more organized life. I was on the wrong road before I got in. And then I had to follow some rules. And my dad was an infantryman in World War II, and he was glad I went in. He said, "You'll learn something about discipline." And he said, "And I don't mean you getting in trouble for doing something wrong. You do things right and you don't get in trouble." And I said, "Well, I'll join up and see what it's like, and if I don't like it, I'll only have to be here a couple of years during that time. If I wanted to get out, I'd have to go to the reserves for a little while." But I stayed in. And as soon as my term was up there, I came down here and enlisted in the Coast Guard. So all my time counted the other way. So I had about 7 years in, and I went down to the air station here, and I knew I wanted to be in the, I'd been on a boat there with the Coast Guard for just a little bit, just seeing how it was, and I said, "No, I want to fly."
So what was your job in the Coast Guard?
I was electronics chief.
Okay.
And
can you kind of explain what that entails?
If you'd be stationed at a unit most of the time, because civilian electricians and electronics people were stationed at where they would, if they couldn't fix it at the base, at the unit, they'd pack it up and send it to them, and they'd get it overhauled and fixed, and it'd come back, or you'd get another one in the mail, whatever.
These are components on aircraft.
No, these were, from my point, is the air station, the airplanes and the helicopters. That's what they did.
Okay.
They were rescue units that go out, and then they had a Coast Guard ship there here in Tampa, and they would go out on their patrols. If I'd stayed in the Army, I'd have been pushing troops around and doing stuff, and I said I wanted to learn something and do something that helps people, not turns them against me because I'm yelling at them, telling them how an idiot they are. But you never know. They pull out they were cleaning their rifles when the gunfire started, and there was no supervision. And during those times, there were animosity between blacks and whites and whatnot, and so we never did find out what started or who started it. But I said, I need to go and check on the Coast Guard. And I had a friend that was in the Coast Guard in Mobile, Alabama, when I went back there. And they took me down and gave me some tests and stuff like this, and they took me right into aviation instead of going to boot camp, because I'd been in the Army. So I knew what boot camp was about. I knew how to follow orders, that kind of stuff. And then they sent me directly to the aviation end of the training. And then I got to where I was going, and I got to look around and see what I like to do. And I thought, well, I'd like to go over and check out that air station over there. And lo and behold, they got me in there and sent me to electronics school. And before you know it, I was first class, and then a few years later I made chief and went on, and I retired as an E8. I didn't want to, the E9s, if you're going to have to go to some place, it's not where you want to go. As far as not being abused or anything, but it's boring work because they're doing all the paperwork and making the rules, that kind of,
administrative.
Yeah. And
so were you flight crew, and then which aircraft?
Was I what?
Were you flight crew? Were you actually on?
I was flight crew.
On which aircraft?
I flew in the little jets they have.
Okay, the old
And-
Falcons?
Yeah.
Okay.
And also I flew and got qualified in H-3s, helicopters. So I flew either one. And by then I was chief running electronic stop. So if I didn't, I'd look at the schedule and say, oh my God, what are we doing tomorrow? No, not sitting in there talking to people and stuff. You know, not the workers, not the actual coasties, but other people coming in from other jobs and trying to, they just talking a bunch of BS. So I would check the flight schedule and I'd get on those flights and I went to one of those meetings. And the captain called me up and one day and he says, hey Chief, says, we got a deal scheduled tomorrow. He said, are you going to be there? And I said, well, what's on the schedule? I haven't seen it yet. And he says, well, it's some people coming down from here. And I said, I don't really much care for that. I'll get a flight tomorrow. He goes, boy, he says, I wish I could do that. And so from there, I went on back to training in the electronics end of it at the Coast Guard Air Station in Mobile.
Okay.
And they had a training division there. I didn't have to run roughshod over a bunch of E3s and 4s and whatnot. They had to do it themselves. I just took care of some other businesses and stuff. And that's pretty much after I'd gotten there and met, I stayed after a couple of years and I'd met some people. And that's where I met Nikki.
Okay.
Well, Nikki's my daughter, I mean her mom.
Yeah.
And
Do you have a daughter? You have any grandchildren?
Lily, you met Lily?
Yes, I've met Lily. That's
Yeah.
why I'm asking.
She's-
you know, give them a shout out, tell them hello or something.
Hey, babe, you girls better be busy.
Yeah.
And they got a mind of their own,
Oh, sure.
and it's not how do I put this? I was not strict as like holding their feet to the grindstone or something, but I'd remind them, hey, you got to get this done. Da, 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 da.
Do you think that your military training helped raise your daughter and possibly your granddaughter with the way you raised them?
It helped me learn about people in the most part. And you couldn't take a handful of people and have every one of them, maybe two of them are similar, but no, they all got their own quirks and characteristics. What you had to teach them was responsibility. You got a job to do, and this is what you're doing in the Coast Guard. You can't go screw around over here and do this and expect to get it done and all that. I said, so you guys got to get your stuff done. If you got everything if I come to your office and say you got all this done, because I had a list of everything that was being done at the time. I was working over in the office next to the commanding officer. I said, if you got all this done, and if they hesitated, I said, oh, you get it done. If they didn't hesitate, and I said, well, good. Then you know what you're going to say. Have you practiced, or you're not scared of talking to people in front of people and stuff. And because they had some civilians there, from different places that we would go to learn, and they all did a pretty good job.
Very nice.
If you were straightforward to them.
What are you currently doing? Are you just retired, or you got some kind of job on the side?
Hell no, I got 2 retirement checks and my Social Security.
Nice. What did you do after you left the military?
I went into, I'm trying to think how that, I was helping some people sell some stuff that the military used, as far as you could get it through the manufacturer for maintaining and some some books about handling people and how you associate. And I'd give it to these young men and tell them to read it. And I said, there will be a test. And pretty much I was doing that at the air station in Mobile. A lot of training went on for pilots and stuff there. I don't know, you familiar with it?
The ASM branch, yes.
Yeah.
I've been there.
And I would get classes of first-time aviation pilots in training going there. And they would come into some classes that I had. And I kind of set up the curriculum myself, because I told them, I says, you're going to be dealing with people that don't work with officers. All the enlisted are over here doing maintenance or doing this or doing that. And you guys are over here as officers going to school, going to training, doing your training. So most of you guys don't meet up unless you're on a helicopter or an airplane. I said, so once in a while, you guys, I'll set it up. You can come over and sit in the classroom and ask questions. And ask questions of them, and they'll ask questions of you, and you can see how they work. So you're not out on a flight and the two of you don't agree on something, and it doesn't make any difference if you're senior or not, being the pilot. I mean, it makes a difference, and it'll go your way because you're the senior person. But it won't go good for you when you get down back to flat ground, because rumors will spread and people won't want to fly with you and everything else. I said, you got to be a human. It's not like you're in the Air Force and they don't ever talk to the enlisted. And so
It sounds like you taught like crew resource management, how to.
Yeah, you had these jobs, but that doesn't mean you couldn't help out on another one. You should know more than just your job. A couple of things you learn, you go to school for that isn't something you do every day, but you have the opportunity to learn how to do it in case you need to, and somebody else can't do it. So,
have you used any of your benefits from being in the military, your GI Bill, the veterans home loan, anything like that?
Yeah, everything that they've got, if I'm eligible for it, I've got.
Do you think that young people should join the military? So if your granddaughter was sitting here and she was talking about the military, what advice would you give her?
All right, I wouldn't advise any young person to go into the military without checking it out. I said, you can go talk to a recruiter and let me know what they said, and I'll tell you whether it's the truth or not. But I said, many people have gone in out of high school, straight into the military, and thinking it's going to be fine. Well, you're going to have it okay with the Air Force and the Coast Guard. But if you go into the Coast Guard and don't get into aviation, it's not going to be peaches and cream. So you have to make up your mind, and whoever interviewed you, it would be a recruiter, and they're not going to tell you the bad things or the things that happen that you might not understand. But you need to be upfront with people, and if they don't like what you said and you haven't joined up or anything, say, well, I'll take it somewhere else. But you got to be grown up about it too. I always gave her instructions. You might not like it, you might like it, and there's always a chance if you decide you like it that you're going to get stationed somewhere that you never would have wanted to go. But you'll have to bite your tongue and take care of it or do something to change it. And I said, the nice thing is they're going to feed you. They're going to take care of you medically, and you have, I guess it's still 30 days a year vacation, don't you?
Yeah, that's what they're working on.
Yeah. And if you play it right and you get to talk to somebody that has been where you think you might want to go talk to them. They'll tell you whether it's up front or not, or it's, well, it's down. And a lot of times it'll be just the person that happens to be in charge of a portion of it. It makes it hard on other people. And when they transfer out, everything smooths out. So you're just dealing with people, and you have to learn to understand them. You don't have to criticize them, because you ain't going to get anywhere doing that. They'll remember you. I said, you just be polite. Realize that you don't need to associate with those people unless you're working directly for them. So
You don't have to be friends. You got to work together.
say you got to grow up quick,
Yes, sir.
and if you are honest about it, even if it wasn't pleasant for you, you'll learn something.
That's a very good point. I think that's great advice for a young person. So after your 33 years of service, when you were transitioning out, was that difficult?
Oh no, I knew the ins and outs by then a long time. I got some specialties. I got to stay here, and had access to the base, and I could go over to the Air Force if I want, just like you can, right? You retired from them?
Yes, sir.
And I went to the Air Force a couple times. I had some surgery over there, but they were very good. And so use your resources.
Yes, sir. Well, that's pretty much all the questions I have for you today. On behalf of the Palm Harbor Chamber of Commerce and the Palm Harbor Veterans Association, we'd like to thank you very much for your service.
Sure.
And we'd like to give you one of our Veteran Choice tattoos. Again, thank you very much for
All
your
right.
interview today, and we appreciate everything you've done.